Hello you guys, welcome back to another video. I am going to be doing the long-awaited Disney College Program Q&A today because I feel like I have a lot of questions that I could answer for this video. A lot of these are questions that other people have been asked in the past. They've been asked on things like TikToks and my YouTube videos and stuff. I've gotten comments all the time being like, how does this work? How does that work? What is this like? So we're going to answer all of those burning questions today. I'm going to be doing my makeup, but I don't have a mirror right here, so I'm just going to be using like a random product back here as my mirror, and we're gonna hope for the best. But throughout this whole video too, if you have any further questions or want me to elaborate a little bit, let me know in the comments so that I can talk to you guys and tell you a little bit more about it, because I love talking to you guys in the comments. So a little bit about me first before we get started. Hello, my name is Emily. I am a recent Disney College Program participant. I was an attractions cast member as well as a PhotoPass cast member, and I'll talk about why those two things were in the same program in just a little bit. I worked in Hollywood Studios. At first I was at Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, and then I was at Hollywood Studios doing PhotoPass. So that was my roles, and I loved both of them for different reasons, and we'll talk about that, like I said, in a little while. So if you have any questions about those particular roles too, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll do like another separate video on the roles themselves, because I feel like I could talk all day long about what those roles were like. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you want to see or hear any more about that, because I would love to talk to you guys about it. Hey guys, editing M here. I'm just going to be telling you right now that I'm going to be interjecting a little bit throughout this video, because I feel like I didn't talk as much as I could have about a couple of topics, and I skipped over a couple of like loophole type things that I feel like you guys should still know. So because of that, I'm not going to put like a whole bunch of text on the screen. I'm just going to interject here and talk a little bit more about those things. So let's get back to the video. So we're going to talk about the application process first and all of that. The first question here is, what is the application process like and when should I apply? So as far as when should you apply, you should think about when you want to do the program. Basically, the application process starts the semester before you want to do the program. So I wanted to do the program in the fall of 2024 because I was graduating in May of 2024 from college, and I wanted to do it right after graduation. So because of that, I applied to the program in January, because they do the application this semester before the actual program starts. So people have started the program as early as May, which is why they do it in January, so that you can get the application done and then start prepping for arriving as early as May if you want to. I didn't arrive until September, but I was still able to do the whole process within 2 weeks. That way I had a full like 8 months-ish to actually prepare for the program, which was awesome, but it was also like I was twiddling my thumbs here, but I didn't want to do it in the summer, so that is why we did it in the fall. And as far as the application itself, if you haven't watched my application process / GCP acceptance video, definitely look up in the cards and description, because I talk about my experience doing the application process. Now everybody's application process is different. Mine took 2 weeks. Some people have taken like 3 days, which is crazy. Other people have taken months to get any type of feedback or response from Disney. And it all just kind of depends on when you want to start your program and how long your program is going to last. So think about that whenever you're applying and things, because if you want to do it immediately after graduation, like the week of graduation you're moving to Florida, then you'll probably have a faster time getting in and doing the whole process than me, who wanted to start in August or September, if that makes sense. The next question here is one that I got a couple of times on one of my TikToks. It was, can international people apply? So yes, they can. The college program is available for a lot of participating countries. They have different programs for different countries. Other than the domestic US program, they have the cultural exchange program. I think that one's for Canada. They also have the international academic exchange program, or whatever it's called, for people in like the UK. They also have a Brazilian program. They have a Japanese program. There's a bunch of different programs that you can apply for depending on your country. So if you're international looking to apply, definitely look into what the requirements are and if there is eligibility there. The cool part about the international programs is, if you are familiar with Epcot, Epcot has a bunch of different pavilions that require international program participants to be working in those areas. So people who are doing like the cultural exchange program for the UK, for example, if they're from England, they're probably going to be working in the UK pavilion, if that makes sense. And same with Canada. If you're doing the Canadian program that lasts like a year long or whatever, you would most likely be working in the Canadian pavilion in Epcot. So that's a good way to kind of gauge if there is even an option for you to work for Disney and the Disney parks and do a college program. A little thing to note here is that Epcot is not the only place for international people to be working. Obviously, you could be from anywhere and work anywhere. It's just I was using Epcot as kind of an example because I saw a lot of people who were on UK year-long programs that were working in the UK pavilion. If you haven't seen Lauren's Floating Lights on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, that's where I'm getting that reference from. Other people like Emma Louise, shout out to her, she was on my program at the same time, although I never actually met her. I just kind of saw her in passing. She is on a year-long program in a different sense. So she was in attractions and now she's in merch. And a couple people that I worked on in attractions, they were doing the same thing. They were working in attractions at Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway, and now they're at merch on Sunset Boulevard. So it just kind of, depends on what kind of program you're going for. I worked with people who were from New Zealand and Australia when I was on the attractions program. They were only there for like 3 months though. So it just kind of depends on how long you're wanting to do the program. A lot of places have like 3-month long programs like UK and Brazil and other countries around the world. So again, just think about what you want to do and go from there. See what kinds of programs are out there for you. Another question that I heard on one of my TikToks is it hard to get in? So online it says that there is like a 30% acceptance rate, but in reality, I have not heard of someone, at least recently, like in recent years, saying that they never got in or they applied and didn't hear anything or whatever. Usually that's only if there is some type of underlying circumstance. They try to accept as many people as they can. Online it says, like I said, like 20 or 30% acceptance, and that's largely because people will apply and not do a lot of reading as far as would they even be eligible, should they apply, and what are the requirements and all of that. Some people have tried to apply before they start college and that's not allowed, so that's part of the reason. Some people will apply a lot later than their graduation day. You're allowed to apply as far out as 2 years post-graduation. So if you do any longer than that, you won't be able to do the program either. So things to think about there. Just do your research and you'll probably get in. Don't take my word for it, but I've not heard of anybody in the last couple of years that haven't gotten in, if you know what I mean. A big deterrent that I've noticed, especially when I was first starting out, is people would oftentimes tell me in things like my TikToks and my YouTube videos and stuff that they are apprehensive of doing the program because of the amount of money that would be made. Do you have to bring a bunch of money down with you in order for you to like be stable financially and all of that? So the answer here is very subjective. It depends on a lot of things. If you want to try and save money on the program, props to you, okay? I was able to save maybe like 200, 300 bucks because I spent it all on the experiences that were down there. I spent it on hotel staycations and merch. That was a big thing. If you haven't seen my merch haul video, definitely look up in the cards and description. I talked about all of the things that I bought on my entire program, and it's a lot. So with that said, you know your own limits and all of that. You know your own personal situation. So if you would feel more comfortable bringing money down with you, then go for it. I was lucky enough to, have parents that were able to potentially send me extra cash if I needed it, which I didn't. I did not need them for that. Rent comes out of your paycheck every week. So whatever you get into your paycheck, you don't have to worry about the rent side of it because we'll get into it in a minute. But if you're living at Flamingo Crossings, you can actually either say you want to deduct all of it all at once, that you're basically living for free, which I've heard almost no people do. However, the rent money comes out of your paycheck. You don't see that rent money at all. What you're getting in your paycheck is what is yours and yours alone. So because of that, you don't have to worry about things like rent. You only have to worry about the things that are directly coming out of your account. So things like groceries, if you're paying for your own groceries. I was lucky enough, like I said, my parents paid for my groceries because we have an Instacart account. I did not bring my car. So we're getting into a lot of things that we're going to be talking about later on, but because I didn't have a car and my roommates were always on different schedules, I ended up having my groceries delivered and I just used my parents' Instacart account to get that sent to me. So if you're not in that kind of situation, definitely think about that and maybe bring some extra cash with you if you want to. But other than that, you'll be totally fine. Don't stress about it. I've heard people say mixed things. They've been like, oh, it's just for the experience. I'm here for a good time, not a long time. And some people are like, I'm using this as a true saving opportunity. And that all also depends on what your role is, because your role can definitely impact how much you're making in a week. Now, I was lucky enough to have a somewhat good paying role while also having free time. Some people are in merch or food and beverage roles. They make bank. They make a lot of money, but they have long hours. They barely have any free time at all. So you're gonna definitely have some drawbacks and pros depending on what your role is as far as money goes and all of that. But yeah, definitely think about that and your financial situation for you. Don't listen to anybody else on the internet. Just think about, okay, how would I feel most comfortable doing this thing? Because if you're going to college in your hometown and you're still living with your family, this is gonna be the first time that you're out of your house and living on your own with roommates and things. So think about what would make you the most comfortable and just go with that. Now we're gonna get into roles. That was a kind of good segue, I guess. Another question was, is your role random? So the answer to this question largely is yes. Your role is random. Whenever you accept the program, you're accepting it in its entirety. So you don't know what your role is going to be up until about a month before your program actually starts. That's actually a very nice thing compared to what they used to do before COVID. Before COVID, you didn't know what your role was going to be until you checked into your respective living situation, which is crazy because you could be totally expecting something like attractions or whatever, and you end up getting something like food and bev, and then you're like, oh crap, you know? So we definitely have it much better than it used to be, and I'm aware of that for a lot of reasons, and one of them is that we kind of get a warning as far as what our role is going to be. Now, you do get to kind of pick what your preferences are, but they're not guaranteed. So they try to match you with one of your top 3 preferences and recommendations, and you can definitely lobby for that whenever you're doing your phone interview, because that's a step that they never really changed. I know they didn't have the phone interview when it was like right after COVID ended and the college program was back. Like that first semester, they did not have phone interviews, and that's probably largely because they were still hiring people to do those phone interviews. And since then, they've had a phone interview every semester. So whenever you're doing your phone interview, definitely talk about what your strengths and weaknesses are as far as what your roles and preferences are, because that can definitely help you in the long run. Like if you have seating experience at a restaurant and you've been a waitress or a waiter before, you'll likely get put into food and beverage. So think about that. I had experience working on machines and I had experience in photography, and that's where I got my 2 top roles from. We'll talk about what I ended up doing in my special situation when I was transferring and all of that into a new role. But a large reason why I was working at Mickey Minnie's Wonderway Railway is because I told my interviewer, I don't remember what her name was, I think her name was Heather, she was really cool. She asked me what my favorite ride in the parks were, and I was like, it's probably Mickey Minnie's Wonderway Railway in Hollywood Studios. And lo and behold, that's where I ended up working. So talk about your excitement and the things that you're most looking forward to on your program, because it could potentially help you in the role selection process for the recruiters and things. We're going to talk a little bit now about the living situation at Flamingo Crossings. Do you have to live at Flamingo? No, you do not, although it's highly recommended that you do because of a couple of things. Firstly, Flamingo Crossings, like I said before, takes care of your rent from your paycheck, so you don't actually see the rent payments come in, whereas if you're living in an external apartment or whatever like that, you'll have to worry about your rent on your own. Disney only has a partnership with Flamingo Crossings Village, so if you're living anywhere off campus, you're gonna have to think about that as well. Some people have said that it's less expensive or more expensive or whatever, so just think about what you want to do and what your future goals are, because holy cow, that contour went a little too hard. I'm gonna blend that out a little bit. But yeah, just think about what your future goals are, and if you're gonna stay at the company long term, because that's a possibility as well. Just think about those kinds of things, because that could definitely affect if you're going to be living in Flamingo Crossings or not. Now, some people, like my roommate back at Flamingo Crossings, shout out to Erin if you're watching, she is planning on hopefully staying part-time, full-time with Disney World. So she is living in Flamingo Crossings until her college program is up, and then we'll have to transfer out of Flamingo Crossings into an apartment should she get that role. Some people, you know, just live in Flamingo Crossings like I did, just for the whole like Disney college program experience, and then they leave and go on to better things in life. So that's what I ended up doing, but I knew a couple of people who lived off campus like 30-45 minutes away and brought a car, and they lived their happiest lives there. So think about that. You don't absolutely have to live at Flamingo Crossings, although the majority of people do, so there's that. They also hold your college program traditions at Flamingo Crossings, and they hold a lot of college program specific classes and stuff at Flamingo Crossings, and it's just a lot easier to get to those things if you are already living there, you know. Another thing that I'll just answer right now is, how do roommates work? If you're gonna be living in Flamingo Crossings, your rooming situation is entirely random. You fill out some type of questionnaire, living situation questionnaire, and from there you get placed, or it's up to you to find that link if you want to. And I was able to find Erin. She was an awesome roommate, and some people have had really bad issues with their linked roommates because maybe they weren't honest, or maybe their personalities didn't mesh very well and they just had a hard time. So that is definitely a gamble that you're gonna have to deal with. You're going to have a roommate if you're living in Flamingo Crossings. full stop. Depending on if you're living in a 4x4 with your own little corner of the apartment, or if you're living in a 2x2 and you're sharing with your linked roommate. It just kind of all depends, but you're not going to be getting a Flamingo Crossings apartment that is just 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. It's not going to be just yours. You're going to be sharing it regardless. Something that I didn't really do a great job of explaining here is every apartment at Flamingo Crossings has 4 people in it. Whether you're sharing a bedroom and a bathroom, just a bathroom, or having a whole corner to yourself, there's always going to be 4 people in your apartment, or at least 4 beds. Now, will there always be 4 people? No. The majority of my program, I had 3 people. Some of it was 4 people, some of it was 3 people, some of it was 2 people. So it just kind of depends on the overlap of people coming into the apartment, but you're not going to be able to like guarantee that you're not going to have any roommates, if you know what I mean. So think about that too if you are like apprehensive about that. It's a big deterrent for some people because they just don't want to have a roommate. And if that's the case, just get an apartment off campus and deal with it, because I don't know what else to tell you. But anyway, as far as the linking process goes, that process itself was very easy. They don't give you true recommendations. They just say, okay, look for someone with those things on like Facebook groups and whatever. I really did not like Facebook, and I only got Facebook for the groups because they were very, very, very helpful, especially for finding roommates and finding friends and stuff like that. I found Erin through the Facebook groups, and she was the only person that had my exact days that was also a girl. There were a couple of other guys, and I was like, I don't know about that. I don't know if I want to live with a guy as a woman. You know, some people had no issues with it. They could live in co-ed apartments all day long. But for me and my sanity, I needed to have an all-girls apartment. And so I linked up with Erin, and we talked for a long time, and our personalities just clicked. And from there on out, we were besties on the program. She was one of the only people that I actually went places with while I was on the program. If I wasn't with Erin, I was either with friends that were visiting or I was going alone. And honestly, I'm okay with that. Quality over quantity, you know what I mean? The linking process was pretty easy. Once you found your person that you were going to be linking up with, they send you an email with all of the steps and all of the things to do, so you're not skipping out on anything. The process was honestly really easy. It wasn't guaranteed that you're going to be living in the same exact corner of the apartment. So like if you're living like I was in a 4x2, it wasn't guaranteed that you're going to be living in the same side as the person or even in the same bedroom if you're in a 2x2. My situation was very different because Erin had some accessibility accommodations that needed to be addressed. And so she was living in the accessibility part of the apartment, and that was fine. I was kind of expecting that. I thought it would be nice to kind of share the space with her, but because my other roommate did not have any accommodations like me, I was placed on that side of the apartment, and that's fine. Another random Flamingo Crossings question is, can you bring a car? Yes, you can, although parking spots are first come, first serve, as well as parking decals. So get your car registered with Disney and the program as soon as possible if you're going to be living in Flamingo Crossings, because otherwise you're kind of SOL in that situation. I'm honestly surprised that I didn't talk about this more when we were talking about cars, but I want to talk a little bit about the bus system because I thought it was really great, to be honest. I never had any issues with it really. There was one time where the bus was having some type of malfunction and I had to get the next bus, which made me late for work, but they ended up calling my leaders and they were like, listen, it's not their fault that they were late. It's our fault because our bus was not ready for them. And so I didn't get a point for it or anything. I was totally fine. It was like as if nothing happened. So the bus leaders and stuff are really good about making sure that they communicate with your workplace location to make sure that nothing really damages your reputation and stuff because the buses are having issues. Other than that, everything is pretty easy and simple. It's a very secure way to get around too. You're not taking like a random Lynx bus. You're taking a bus transportation specifically for Flamingo Crossings. You have to show them your Flamingo Crossing card saying that I live here in order for you to even get on the bus, let alone ride it. So that's something to think about too for your parents' peace of mind, because my parents liked that. They were a little apprehensive at first about me not bringing a car, and then we did some research on the bus transportation system and they were like, oh, so you only have Flamingo Crossings people on this bus. That makes me feel better. So we were able to not bring my car, and it was honestly really great. It was less to worry about at that point. And again, I had friends that had cars that could bring me places if I needed to. At the end of the day, a car is not an absolute necessity unless you just like feel like you need it for your sanity. Erin had a car and that was great. We used it all the time for carpooling and stuff. She drove me to a bunch of our like outings whenever we would have days off together. But for the most part, you don't need one is the biggest thing here. Now we're going to get into classes and school and all of that. So about the Flamingo Crossings classes, those are like multi-week or just 1 week seminar type classes. So because of the nature of the classes, you cannot get college credit for them. You would have to get college credit through your university classes, if that makes sense. So Flamingo Crossings does have classes that you can take. I took a couple of them just for for, you know, future knowledge and all of that. I was just curious about how things worked with Disney and all of that, but they are not classes that you can take to get college credit for. You know what I mean? Unless your school is really cool and will let you take like a 2 or 3 week long class for a college credit and it just so happens to fit, like you can probably lobby for that, maybe. But for the most part, it is not meant for college credit. I don't know if a lot of colleges will appreciate that, but you can ask. The worst your advisor and your college could say is no, and you just take the class for fun, which is what I did, and I honestly really enjoyed it. But the classes that they had for these like seminar type things were really, really interesting. I learned a lot about leadership and about the company as a whole and how they operate on the inside. It was really, really neat to learn about, but like I said, it's not going to be for college credit because a lot of these things you actually are not allowed to record. It just has to be in your brain. You're learning these things. You have to be present. Disney takes confidentiality to a whole new level, so definitely think about that as well. If you want to take really, really cool classes, you have to get onto the dorm's website and register for those as soon as they come out if you're looking. So you have to look pretty consistently and constantly to get classes and other really, really cool behind the scenes, backstage tours type things. Those are possible as well. Because I worked in an attraction, I kind of got a backstage tour of Mickey Maze Runaway Railway almost every day, which was cool because obviously that's part of my job. But some people did backstage tours on like Tower of Terror, Haunted Mansion, or I think there was one on Flight of Passage that I really, really wanted to try, but I got online too late and they were all gone. And I was so sad because that's one of my favorite rides of all time. But Flamingo Crossings and the college program in general has really, really good classes for like learning more about the company as a whole. But again, you can't really get college credit for those classes, if you know what I mean. But getting into university classes, if you are still in college and want to try and take classes while you're on this program, it is possible. However, is it recommended? I would say no, just because your free time is going to be entirely taken up by going to parks and enjoying and making your experience as awesome as it could possibly be. Doing classes on top of that is sometimes a little hard. I knew people that did it and we're fine. You are required to have some type of office hours / study hours if you are taking classes. You just have to tell the college program that you are doing that, because otherwise you might not get guaranteed time to work on your classes. I promise my makeup looks way harsher than it actually is, because I just looked in the viewfinder and I was like, holy cow. But I got up and looked at the mirror and it looks fine, so I don't know what's going on there. If you decide to maybe take a gap semester on classes and still want to get college credit for the internship for the college program as a whole, that is possible. However, talk to your admissions advisor and all of that before you decide that that's the prerogative that you're going to take, because I had to have 2 internships to graduate with my major at Clemson, and I was not allowed to make this count as an internship credit. It would have been like a study abroad type thing, and because my major is so niche, it wasn't able to be used as a replacement course, you know what I mean? So talk to your advisors about getting the college program as an internship requirement or college credit, because some people can, some people can't. It just kind of depends on your university or college. Another thing to note here is if you're on some type of scholarship or you have a graduation timeline that you don't want to be impacted. I had that issue. I wanted to graduate in 4 years, and if I did the program during my college career, I would have had to graduate a semester late, and I didn't want to do that. So I waited until after graduation. Obviously with your scholarship, it just kind of depends on what your financial advisor says, you know? So like maybe you have to have a certain number of credits a semester for your scholarship to count, then talk to your advisors about that, because if you want to do the program during your college semesters, it might be impacted if you have your scholarship, because sometimes once you lose your scholarship, you can't get it back. So think about that as well. Talk to your advisors and your financial situation and go from there. Another random question that I got is how many hours are normal to be working in a week? So this depends, like I said, on your role. So if you are in merchandise, you're probably going to be working 40 to 50 hours a week. If you're in food and beverage, you're probably going to be working 50 to 60 hours a week. That's just how it works. They like to give college program participants the bottom of the barrel shifts, because you are quite literally at the bottom of the totem pole unless you're extending into like another program, and then you'll have a little bit of seniority there. But for the most part, you are the newbie. You are the intern at the very bottom of the chain, so you're going to be getting kind of crappy shifts, and that's just how it is. You're going to have to accept that, but you are able to like trade those shifts and trade for days off and things like that. So you are able to manipulate it a little bit pending that other people want your shifts and are willing to to trade with you. For the most part, I worked as an attractions cast member about 36 hours a week. I was given 6 days of 6-hour shifts, and then I got 1 day off. Whereas when I was in PhotoPass, some days I would have like full 8.5, 9-hour, 10-hour shifts some days, and I got 2 days off a week, which was really awesome. So it just kind of depends on what your role is and what you're wanting. You can double up on your shifts and things, like I said, with trading and picking up and stuff. But as far as scheduled time goes, you're gonna have to have at least 28 hours to make your rent payment if you're living in Flamingo Crossings. But other than that, you could get scheduled just those 28 hours, or you could get scheduled like 60, because either way is possible. And going into extensions, what are they, how they work, and all of that. So if you decide on your college program, I don't want to leave when I'm supposed to be leaving. Like if I were Erin, this is what she did. She was supposed to be leaving February 6th, like I did. However, she decided in October that she was going to extend her program to May. So now she's leaving like end of May. Well, last week she just told me she extended again because they sent out the email again. So now she's staying until August. And then from there, she's going to try and do part-time, full-time. So extending can definitely benefit you in a lot of ways. I know a lot of people that have extended because they just didn't want to leave. I know a lot of people that extended for the end goal of becoming part-time, full-time with the company. You don't have to extend if you don't want to. I did not, and I honestly don't regret that, partly because I did get engaged on my last day of the program. So there's that. That made it a little easier to leave. But if I didn't have this person in my life, I probably would have extended and stayed forever because I love my program so much. Everybody's gonna be pressuring you to extend. Why didn't you extend? Don't you want to? Don't you want to stay with us? If you do, that's great. But if you don't take what they say to heart, because at the end of the day, you know what your goals are and you know what you want. So don't do it because other people are like, everybody does it, you should do it too. Like don't give in to that. Do what you want to do at the end of the day. I was pressured into extending at one point and I was like, you know what? No, I'm actually not gonna do that. I want to go home and I want to, you know, be with my partner and see my family again and actually not live in Florida. That was a big reason. I did not want to live in Florida full time. I was like, this is an internship and that's it. Depending on what your prerogative is and what your goals are for your life and your professional career, think about that before you extend. I know a lot of people have extended because they didn't know what else to do, and that's fine too. But if you have like a life goal to do this one thing in your professional career, use your college program to network, or use your college program as like a last hurrah before you really get down to business, which is what I did. At the end of the day, it is what you make of it. So that was a little random rant. You can do your program for as long as 7 months. At the very beginning when you're applying, you can say, I want to spend May to February on the program. I want to take the entire time for the fall 2024-2025 program and do all 7 months. And that's fine. But you can also decide to extend after that, and you can make the program however long or short or whatever you want. That probably made no sense, but that's how my brain works. We're going to talk a little bit now about transferring roles. Now, I transferred for a reason that is a little unconventional. I was in attractions, which is safety critical, and something happened. I'm not going to get into it, but I got in trouble for something that I made a mistake on, and they told me, okay, you're not allowed to work on safety critical roles anymore because this was a safety issue. So because of that, they transferred me into photography and being a PhotoPass photographer. You are able to transfer roles if you would like. You can go into the transfer portal and basically just say, I don't want to be here. Give me what you got at this point, because at that point, you're kind of saying, I would give anything to not be in this role. You know what I mean? So even if you hate the role, sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. You know what I mean? As I'm editing this, I'm noticing that I didn't talk about this quite enough. I didn't make this hit as hard as I wanted it to. The transfer portal is an as-needed last resort thing because you don't get to pick where you go after you put your name into the transfer portal. It's not like you're going on LinkedIn and applying for jobs that are open. No, you have to apply for the college program transfer portal. And then from there, you get picked up wherever you're needed and you have to go to that location. So something to think about there too. Also, you're only allowed to do that one time. Once you're in that one location, you're either terming or self-terming. That's it. You don't get to pick anywhere else that you want to go. You have to wait until your next program if you want to do multiple, which is possible. But like I said, the transfer portal is for your last resort. You could go anywhere but where you are right now. So think about that before you decide to transfer. One of my friends from attractions left Mickey Mae's Runaway Railway and ended up in Magic Kingdom doing outdoor food and beverage. And you know what? She's living her best life, but some people would be like, oh, come on now. And then they would have just left. So think about that before you decide to transfer. Try to make your role as great as it can be. You might not love it. It might not be glamorous, but try to enjoy it as much as you can. Enjoy your days off. Make that the thing that's driving you to go to work and do all the things, because at the end of the day, it is what you make of it, you know? So you are able to transfer, yes, but it's not recommended, especially early on in your program. I would say wait 2 months and try to stay in your role as long as you can until it's no longer even feasible to do it, or you're like truly having a mental health crisis and need to leave. Because other than that, I feel like you could potentially make like outdoor vending role the best time in your life. I know people that have. Or like say you are given a custodial role and you're like, oh crap, I'm gonna be cleaning up throw up and poop and all sorts of random things, gross things all day long. Custodial is one of the most satisfactory roles that I've ever seen. People rave about being a custodian at Disney because it's all what you make of it at that point. Like they love to be able to talk to the guests all the time and have some freedom to wander, and obviously they have things to do and they have things to check off throughout the day, but at the end of the day, they love their job. Whenever you get your role assignment, don't be absolutely discouraged to even try it because you never know what could happen, honestly. Make the most of it, and if you are truly unhappy, think about other ways to get around it. You are able to transfer, but do I recommend it? Necessarily? Not really. Hot take. And as far as my situation, someone asked me on a Q&A slide that I put on my Instagram, which role did I like better, PhotoPass or attractions? And I will say that's like comparing apples and oranges, because I loved my attractions role because of where it was, what I was doing. The people were the biggest thing. I miss my run-amuckers. I miss them so much. That made it the hardest to leave. But at the end of the day, it was also a very stressful job. And because of that, I ended up getting what's called safetied out and moved forcibly to another department. And I absolutely loved PhotoPass. I do like PhotoPass more than I did attractions. PhotoPass was so much fun, largely because there's a lot of variety. You can work basically anywhere that you want to. Attractions, you're only trained in this one specific part of the park, and you're not allowed to leave because you don't have training anywhere else to do any other attraction. And photography, once you get the basics down of how the PhotoPass system works, you can work at any park or any resort you want, basically. So I liked that about it. I got to work with characters. That was my absolute favorite part of PhotoPass. I love the character shifts. I was able to, like I said, work in any park I wanted. I made friends everywhere. It was such a great time and I loved it so much. So I think PhotoPass was my favorite, but I like this much. So to end this video out, I'm going to give you some tips, some things that I wish that I knew before I started my program. That way you are kind of more prepared than I was. So I have a couple of points. First thing is, free time is basically non-existent. You're going to be going to the parks. You're going to probably be working a ton. And if you're taking classes, you're going to be doing your classwork at the free time that you have. So use your time wisely, although you probably won't have as much free time as you think. I thought I was going to be going to the parks all the time. And in reality, I was only going to the parks like twice a week, because other than that, I was getting burnt out. I was getting exhausted and it just wasn't enjoyable anymore. So use your free time wisely and just know that depending on your role, you might not have as much free time as other people. Try not to stress about the money part of it. I know that it's hard to say, oh, I'm on an internship and I'm getting $16, $17 an hour and I only get like $235 every week. But you get paid weekly, so you can use that money to either save or spend on things like merch or experiences or whatever. I highly recommend doing any and every after hours event. Try to go to all of the festivals. Try to go to all of the Magic Kingdom after hours, holiday parties. Try to go to, I don't know, all of the things that you can, especially if they are experiences, because there is no other great time to do it if you're not living in Florida and doing the college program, because you do get cast discounts on things. Abuse that as much as you can, because that's the only time in your life you're ever going to have that discount. So use your discount to your advantage. Get those after hours tickets. Do the things that are very rare and you will never have the chance to do again, because you will regret it. I regret it. Trust me. I did a lot of those things, but I skipped out on some and I wish I didn't. So for the learning opportunities, again, the classes that Flamingo Crossings offers, try to go to as many of those as you can. I know sometimes your schedule doesn't allow it, but sometimes, depending on the class, you can get that kind of switched around. You can talk to your leaders and your coordinators, the scheduling people, and be like, listen, I have this thing that I want to go to for the college program. It's a learning opportunity. It's for professional development and whatever. Can you potentially switch me or give me a different schedule or find someone that will be willing to trade with me or want to pick something up? Because at the end of the day, I wish I did a lot more of those learning opportunities. I did a lot of them when I was at attractions because I had the same shift every day, basically. It was very much structured and I knew what my schedule was going to be ahead of time, so I could sign up for things things like that. But in PhotoPass, I did not have that luxury. So I was always afraid to sign up for classes and stuff because I was like, what if this thing happens and I'm no longer able to go and there's like a cancellation policy and all of that. Try to go to as many of these things as you can, because that's probably my biggest regret for the program, is not going to more of those learning and networking opportunities. So if you're doing this for the career advancement side of it, use your free time to go to these classes, because I wish I did. So yeah, that's basically all of the questions and answers that I have for you guys right now. Again, if you have any other further questions or want me to expand on something, let me know in the comments so that I can address that for you guys, because I love talking about my college program. Any chance that I get, I will talk about Disney all day long. So definitely ask me any questions you have that I haven't answered or want me to do like a part 2 on for some reason. Let me know in the comments so that I can talk about that. But with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this very rambly video. If you liked it, please leave a like. I would really appreciate it. Subscribe for more videos from me, because I have engagement and wedding content. I have moving content hopefully coming soon. I am finding a new job currently. So if you want to come along in that journey with me, definitely subscribe and join this little family on this corner of the internet, because I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.